There's a lot of interest in ETFs. That's exchange-traded funds, funds that you can buy on the stock market. But how do you use them? How do they work? How do you find the right one? And what are the pitfalls you should watch out for? Well, here to help us with those questions today is the founder and president of AltaVista Research, an ETF expert himself, Michael Krause. Michael, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Michael, let's get down to basics. Exactly what is an ETF?
ETFs are a hybrid product. They're about 15 years old, and like an index fund, they track an index. But there are a number of features that are unique to an ETF. For example, the fact that you can trade it during the day on a stock exchange, and the fact that you can also, for example, sell short an ETF gives you some added flexibility. In addition, there's some tax features in the way it structures that tend to make it a little bit more tax efficient than, for example, a managed fund. And obviously that taxes are a very important part of the equation, so very appealing to a lot of people.
They're getting a lot more popular now, aren't they?
Yes, I think what I'm seeing in Australia is a real takeoff in the number of assets. It reminds me of the growth that we saw on or around 2000 in the United States. And there's a couple of factors that I think are really similar. One is really the popular disgust with some of the scandals that have erupted among the managed funds, as well as the fact that the markets are down so much and too many of the active managers weren't able to outperform the markets. People are naturally asking themselves, well, what am I paying these higher fees for an active managed fund if you can't even protect me in such a horrible market? And the third thing I see is the fact that there were some new listings recently. It actually helps reinforce the fact that having many tools actually makes each individual tool much more useful, because now instead of just having a few products, you can actually create an entire global portfolio using just ETFs. So having that suite there really makes it a ready-to-go product.
Exactly how do they work?
Well, an ETF, again, is you can trade it just like you would a single stock. And each one, like I said, tracks an index. So what it has is a basket of stocks that are held in the ETF, and you actually buy a share of those stocks. And one of the best features about an ETF that I think is often overlooked is the fact that it's entirely transparent. The fact that I have to know, it must be public information, exactly what is in the ETF at any point in time. And that's unlike, of course, a managed fund where the portfolio manager naturally wants to keep silent what they are doing. So it enables an investor to do a different type of analysis because they really know what they're holding. And so therefore, if you hold two funds, you can make certain that they don't have too much cross-holding, whereas that's not really possible with some of the managed funds out there.
How many are available?
Well, there's a whole number of ETFs available. Here in Australia, there are about 16 or 18. I don't remember the exact number, but there are also exchange-traded commodities as well to allow investors to, again, access markets that oftentimes are sort of hard to access for the retail investor. But in the United States, we've seen a real explosion in the number of ETFs from just a handful a decade ago to over 600 and some odd today. And I think that is indicative of probably where the Australian market is likely to go, because there aren't many barriers to entry in terms of cross-listing a product that already exists somewhere. And while this explosion in the number sort of complicates the choices for investors because there are so many options to choose from, I think at the end of the day, having those choices and the different indices to follow is really a good thing.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about the pitfalls. There must be some.
Well, one of the biggest is the tendency for people, because you can trade them all day long, is for people to do that. And oftentimes they make very poor decisions, and you're going to incur commission costs every time you trade one. But even more importantly, I think, is the fact that when you have a managed fund, you are outsourcing your asset allocation. You're outsourcing the stock picking decisions. With an ETF, it's simply on autopilot. So, for example, the Chinese stock ETF does not get out of Chinese stocks when they get too expensive, and it doesn't go bargain hunting in a beaten up sector. So the onus is entirely on the end investor to continually monitor that portfolio. Again, it doesn't matter if just a basket of stocks isn't inherently good or bad. An ETF just tracks that index, so you have to be the end arbiter as to whether or not this is an appropriate investment for you.
So is there a tendency for investors to get a little complacent?
Well, to a certain extent, it is beneficial for people to put something in their portfolio and to not monitor it every day, so they're not tempted to maybe sell at the worst times and so forth. I've made that mistake myself, but the burden does shift towards the end investor or towards his or her advisor, the ETFs are the perfect tool for asset allocation, which is one of the most important decisions you can make in your investing. But it's one that has to be continually re-examined for changing market conditions. And so that, again, places a burden on the end investor to continually sort of monitor, well, what am I really holding? And is this balance now of ETFs that I've got, is this really appropriate for me? Because, again, there's no active manager deciding on your behalf what's really appropriate and what isn't.
Michael, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.